Captain Sarah Chen stared at the readings on her screen and frowned. The numbers made no sense. Her mining ship, the Persistence, had been checking out a dead solar system looking for asteroid belts worth mining. Instead, they found something that should not exist. Rodriguez. Come look at this, she called to her chief engineer. Miguel Rodriguez floated over in the zero gravity, his boots clicking against the metal floor as the magnetic soles engaged. He looked at the screen and whistled. That's a lot of energy for a dead system, Captain. What do you think it is? No idea. But we're miners, not explorers. We should probably head back and report this to Earth. Sarah touched the communication panel. All hands prepare for departure. We're heading home. But as she spoke, the energy readings spiked. Outside the ship's windows, space began to twist and bend. Colors that had no name swirled in patterns that hurt to look at. Captain, shouted Williams from the navigation station. Something's pulling us in. Sarah grabbed the arms of her chair as the ship shook. Full reverse thrust. Thrusters at maximum. It's not working. Rodriguez ran to the engine controls, his fingers flying over the buttons. Whatever this is, it's stronger than our engines. The twisted space opened like a mouth and swallowed their ship. Sarah felt her stomach drop as reality bent around them. Then as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. Report, Sarah ordered, checking her crew. 37 faces looked back at her, all confused but unharmed. We're somewhere else, Williams said slowly, staring at his instruments. Captain, look outside. Sarah turned to the main window and her jaw dropped. They were in the middle of the biggest fleet of spaceships she had ever seen. Thousands of vessels floated in perfect formations, each one larger than any ship Earth had ever built. The smallest looked like it could swallow their mining vessel 10 times over. Are those warships? Asked Dr. Kim, the ship's doctor and scientist. They look like it, Sarah replied. The ships were painted in gold and silver, covered in weapons and decorations. They looked more like floating palaces than practical spacecraft. A massive ship, easily a kilometer long, began moving toward them. Its hull gleamed with precious metals and jewels. Weapon ports along its sides could have blown the Persistence apart without trying. Incoming transmission, reported Communications Officer Park. Put it through. The main screen flickered and showed a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. He wore elaborate robes and a crown that probably cost more than Sarah's entire ship. When he spoke, the universal translator kicked in. Unknown vessel. You have entered the sacred space of the Galactic Empire during our holy celebration. I am Admiral Zethkar of the Imperial Navy. You will immediately surrender and prepare to be boarded for processing. Sarah looked around at her crew. They were miners and engineers, not soldiers, but they were also humans. And humans had never been good at following orders from people who thought they were better than everyone else. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Persistence, she replied. We seem to have gotten lost. We're just miners, not looking for trouble. Nice ship you have there, by the way. Our mining laser could probably cut through it in about 20 minutes. Are you here to help or just show off? The alien admiral's expression changed. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, clearly not expecting that response. Did you just threaten an Imperial dreadnought? He asked. Threaten? No. I was just making an observation about mining equipment versus pretty decorations, Sarah said calmly. We use tools designed to cut through solid rock and metal. You seem to have built a ship designed to look impressive. Different priorities. Rodriguez leaned over and whispered, Captain, maybe we shouldn't antagonize the kilometer-long warship. They started with surrender immediately, Sarah whispered back. I don't like bullies. On screen, Admiral Zethkar was talking to someone off camera. Other aliens appeared, all wearing fancy clothes and looking confused. Finally, he turned back to the screen. Captain Chen, you and your crew will be transported to Imperial Station Magnificence for proper orientation into the Empire. This is not a request. Orientation into what now? Sarah asked. We didn't ask to join anything. We just want to go home. All species that encounter the Empire become part of the Empire. This is the natural order. You will be assigned your proper place in our civilization based on your capabilities and caste. Sarah felt a familiar anger building in her chest. She had heard this kind of talk before in history classes about Earth's past. Let me get this straight. You're saying we don't get a choice? You just decide what's best for us? Of course. The Empire has brought peace and order to 50,000 species across the galaxy. We know what is best. 50,000 species, Sarah repeated slowly. She looked at her crew and saw the same thoughts in their faces. On Earth, they had a word for empires that forced people to join whether they wanted to or not. And all these species joined willingly? She asked. They all recognized the wisdom of imperial rule, yes? Uh-huh. Sarah turned off the communication for a moment and spoke to her crew. Anyone else getting a bad feeling about this? Security Chief Thompson, a big man who used to be a Marine before becoming a miner, raised his hand. Captain, this sounds like every dictatorship in Earth's history. Pretty words about order and peace, but they're pointing guns at us while they say it. Dr. Kim nodded. 50,000 species all willingly joining? The math doesn't work. Some species would say no, unless they weren't given a choice. Sarah turned the communication back on. Admiral, we appreciate the offer, but we decline. We'd like to go home now. The alien's face turned a darker shade of blue. You cannot decline. You are primitive beings who do not understand your place in the universe. You will be brought to the station for education. Primitive? Rodriguez spoke up. Our mining laser is currently targeted at your engine section. One shot and your pretty ship becomes a very expensive piece of space junk. How primitive is that? Admiral Zethkar looked at something off-screen. Probably tactical displays showing that the small human ship was indeed pointing a weapon at his vessel's most vulnerable spot. You dare threaten the Imperial Navy? You threatened us first, Sarah pointed out. You said we had no choice. We're showing you that everyone always has choices. Ours is to go home peacefully or make this expensive for everyone. More aliens appeared on screen, all talking at once in their own language. Sarah caught words like unprecedented and impossible through the translator. Finally, Admiral Zethkar turned back to them. Very well. You will be escorted to Imperial Station Magnificence as honored guests rather than prisoners. But you must come with us. The Emperor himself will want to meet beings so unusual. Sarah considered their options. They were surrounded by thousands of warships in unknown space. Their mining laser might damage one ship, but it wouldn't get them home. And she was curious about this empire that claimed to rule 50,000 species. All right, Admiral. We'll come as guests, but we're keeping our weapons and our ship, and we leave whenever we want. That is, highly irregular. So are we, apparently. Sarah smiled. Lead the way to your station. This should be interesting. As the Imperial fleet began moving, Sarah watched the organized formations and thought about what they had stumbled into. 50,000 species under one rule. Ships designed more for show than function. Leaders who expected instant obedience. It reminded her of every bad government Earth had ever produced, just bigger. Rodriguez, she said quietly, make sure our engines are ready for a quick exit. I have a feeling we're going to want to leave in a hurry. Already on it, Captain. The Persistence followed the Golden Fleet toward whatever waited ahead, carrying 37 humans who were about to accidentally change the course of galactic history. Imperial Station Magnificence was the biggest artificial structure any human had ever seen. It stretched across space like a small metal moon, covered in towers and domes that sparkled with lights. Thousands of ships came and went from hundreds of docking bays, all moving in perfect order. Now that's impressive, admitted Rodriguez as they approached their assigned docking bay. Captain Chen watched the controlled chaos of traffic and nodded. Big doesn't always mean better, but you have to respect the engineering. She activated the ship's communication system. All crew, remember, we're guests here. Be polite, but don't let anyone push you around. The docking bay was enormous, designed to hold ships much larger than the Persistence. Their mining vessel looked tiny in the vast space. As they stepped off their ship, they were met by a group of aliens in colorful robes. The leader was a tall, elegant creature with green skin and large, intelligent eyes. She moved with the grace of someone used to being important. Welcome to Imperial Station Magnificence. I am Cultural Liaison Vextari. I will help you understand your place in our great civilization. Nice to meet you, Captain Chen replied. I'm Captain Sarah Chen. This is my crew. We appreciate the welcome, but we already understand our place. We're independent miners from Earth, and we'd like to go home when we're done visiting. Vextari's expression suggested she was used to different responses. Of course, Captain. But first you must learn about the Empire. It is the greatest achievement in galactic history. For 10,000 years we have brought peace and order to the galaxy. She led them through corridors that looked more like art galleries than practical spaces. The walls were covered with murals showing aliens kneeling before impressive figures in golden robes. Statues of the same figures stood every few meters. Who are all these people in the pictures? Asked Dr. Kim. The eternal emperors, of course. The rulers who built our perfect society. Each species has its proper role in the grand design. Security Chief Thompson studied the murals with the eye of someone trained to notice details. A lot of kneeling going on in these pictures. The natural position of gratitude toward one's betters, Vextari explained proudly. Interesting, Thompson replied in a tone that suggested he found it anything but. They were brought to a large amphitheater where hundreds of aliens sat in organized rows. Each group was clearly from a different species, but they all wore similar simple clothing and had the same quiet, obedient expressions. These are representatives from our client species, Vextari announced. They are here to learn about proper imperial culture, just as you will. On a raised platform at the front, an imperial official was giving a speech about duty, order, and the wisdom of accepting one's assigned role in society. The audience listened in complete silence. They seem very quiet, observed Dr. Kim. A sign of respect and proper education, Vextari said. The Empire has taught them to overcome their primitive desire to question authority. Captain Chen felt her eye twitch. Questioning authority is primitive? Of course. In a perfect society, everyone knows their place. Questions only lead to chaos and unhappiness. While the official droned on about imperial greatness, Chief Engineer Rodriguez was looking around the amphitheater with professional interest. The walls were covered with display screens showing energy flow patterns for the station. Excuse me, he whispered to Vextari, but your power systems are really inefficient. You could increase energy output by 30% just by rerouting the plasma conduits. And why are you using decorative crystals in your reactor cores? They look pretty, but they reduce efficiency. Vextari stared at him. The reactor designs are 10,000 years old. They are perfect as they are. 10,000 years old? Rodriguez looked shocked. You haven't upgraded your power systems in 10,000 years? That's like us still using candles for light. The imperial way is the correct way. Change leads to chaos. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his captain. On Earth, technology changed every few years. The idea of using the same designs for centuries, let alone millennia, was almost incomprehensible. Dr. Kim was having her own revelations. During a break in the presentation, she approached some of the client species representatives. The universal translator let her speak with a small, furry creature with 6 arms. Hello, I'm Dr. Kim from Earth. What's your homeworld like? The creature looked around nervously before answering quietly. I am worker designation 7741 of the Cretani. We are grateful to serve the Empire. That's a number, not a name. What do your people call you? The creature looked confused. We have numbers. Names are for the ruling castes. Dr. Kim felt sick. What did your people do before joining the Empire? We built things. Ships, stations, machines. But our designs were chaotic and inefficient. The Empire taught us to build according to proper specifications. What kind of things did you build? The creature's eyes lit up despite its nervousness. Beautiful things. Fast ships that could dance through asteroid fields. Stations that grew like living things. But such designs were wasteful. The Empire showed us the correct way. Dr. Kim looked around at the sterile, unchanging imperial architecture. Do you ever miss building your own designs? The creature looked terrified. Such thoughts are incorrect. We are happy to serve. But Dr. Kim saw the lie in its eyes. Meanwhile, Security Chief Thompson was watching the Imperial Guards. They stood at attention around the amphitheater, looking impressive in their golden armor and carrying elaborate weapons. Thompson had been a Marine. He knew how real soldiers moved, how they held their weapons, how they positioned themselves for actual defense. These guards looked like they had never seen real combat. Their armor was designed for show, with gaps that would be fatal in a real fight. Their weapons were ceremonial, pretty but impractical. During another break, one of the guards approached him. You are the human warrior caste, yes? Your people must be proud to produce such fighters. Warrior caste? Thompson laughed. I was an insurance adjuster before I joined the Marines. And before that I sold shoes. The guard looked confused. But you defeated 6 of our ceremonial guards during the boarding inspection. Those were ceremonial guards? I thought they were just being polite. They barely tried to stop me from looking around. The guard's expression grew more confused. On my world, only the warrior caste can fight. How can a shoe seller become a warrior? Anyone can learn to fight if they need to. We don't have castes on Earth. People choose what they want to do. Choose? The guard said the word like it was foreign. But how does society function without proper castes? Messily, Thompson admitted. But we get by. The educational session continued for hours. Vextari showed them videos of Imperial achievements, read them statistics about galactic peace, and explained the benefits of having everyone in their proper place. Captain Chen listened politely, but she was thinking. Everything she saw reminded her of Earth's history. The pretty speeches about order and peace, the rigid castes that kept people from advancing, the way the ruling classes lived in luxury while others served. She had read about societies like this. They all had the same problems, and they all ended the same way. When the session finally ended, Vexitari led them to their quarters. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for prisoners, not guests. The doors locked from the outside. For your protection, Vexitari explained. Some of our client species might not understand that you are honored guests. As soon as they were alone, the crew gathered in Captain Chen's room. Captain, Dr. Kim said quietly, this isn't a galactic empire. It's a slave state with good public relations. Rodriguez nodded. 10,000 years with no innovation. These people have been stagnant for longer than human civilization has existed. Thompson was cleaning his sidearm, and their military is for show. I could take out half their guards with a strong, harsh word. Captain Chen sat on her bed and thought. 37 humans had stumbled into something much bigger and darker than they expected, an empire that ruled through fear and called it peace. Advanced species forced to work as slaves and told they should be grateful. We need more information, she decided. Tomorrow we ask more questions. Polite questions, but the kind that make people think. What if they don't like our questions? Rodriguez asked. Captain Chen smiled grimly. Then we'll know for sure what kind of empire this really is. Outside their locked door, Imperial Station Magnificence continued its perfect, orderly routine. 10,000 years of unchanging tradition continued as it always had. But change was coming, whether the Empire wanted it or not. It was coming in the form of 37 humans who had never learned to stop asking why. The Grand Hall of Imperial Glory was even more impressive than the amphitheater. It stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with floating platforms at different levels connected by streams of light. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species filled the space, all wearing the same simple clothes and same quiet expressions. Captain Chen and her crew stood on one of the mid-level platforms, watching the ceremony below. At the center of it all, a figure in golden robes that had to be the Emperor himself was giving a speech about the glory of the Empire. 10,000 years of perfect peace, his voice boomed through the hall. 10,000 years of every being in their proper place serving the greater good. This is the achievement of Imperial wisdom. The crowd responded with perfectly synchronized cheering that sounded more like a recording than genuine emotion. Creepy, muttered Thompson. Vexitari, standing beside them, beamed with pride. Is it not wonderful? Perfect unity, perfect order. This is what civilization looks like when guided by true wisdom. Dr. Kim was watching the crowd with scientific interest. They're all different species, but they respond exactly the same way. How is that possible? Proper education, Vextari replied. The Empire teaches everyone the correct responses to Imperial ceremonies. You mean you train them to respond on cue? Captain Chen asked. We help them overcome their primitive individual reactions and become part of the greater whole. Captain Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. She had read about this in history books, mass rallies where everyone acted the same way, leaders who demanded perfect loyalty, societies where individual thought was called primitive. It never ended well. After the ceremony, they were introduced to representatives from various client species. Each introduction followed the same pattern. The alien would bow deeply, recite a speech about gratitude for Imperial guidance, and then stand silently unless asked a direct question. But Captain Chen was good at asking direct questions. The first representative was from the Cretani, the small furry beings Dr. Kim had spoken with earlier. This one wore a slightly better version of the standard client species uniform. So you're the Cretani who builds the Empire's ships? Captain Chen asked. We are honored to construct vessels according to Imperial specifications, the alien replied in the same flat tone they all used. Must be satisfying work. I bet you people were natural engineers before joining the Empire. Something flickered in the alien's eyes. We built things, yes. But our designs were chaotic and inefficient. What kind of chaotic things? The Cretani looked around nervously. Ships that could think for themselves, stations that grew and adapted, but such things were wasteful. Rodriguez leaned forward. Self-adapting architecture? Ships with AI? That's incredibly advanced. We don't have anything like that on Earth. Advanced but incorrect, Vextari interjected quickly. Innovation without guidance leads to chaos. The Empire provides proper direction. But if they could build ships that think, Captain Chen pressed, why are they living in those slum levels we passed on the way here? Shouldn't the Empire's best engineers get better housing? An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Vextari's smile became strained. All beings receive housing appropriate to their station. Their station as master engineers is the slums? Their station as client species who require guidance. Dr. Kim was looking around at the other representatives. I notice most of these species seem to have specialized skills. The Morvani there look like they have enhanced sensory organs. The tall ones with the crystal growths probably have advanced computing capabilities. You've gathered the most advanced species in the galaxy and made them servants. Partners, Vextari corrected firmly. Junior partners in the Grand Imperial Project. Junior partners who live in slums and work according to 10,000-year-old designs, Thompson observed. The ceremony continued. But Captain Chen stopped paying attention to the speeches. Instead, she watched the faces in the crowd. Most showed the same trained blankness, but occasionally she caught something else. A flicker of frustration. A moment of sadness. Quick glances between members of the same species that suggested they were thinking thoughts they couldn't voice. These people weren't happy. They were scared. The realization hit her like a physical blow. 50,000 species, all the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. All reduced to servants who pretended to be grateful for the privilege. It was the biggest crime in galactic history, and it called itself peace. The breaking point came during the final presentation. A group of Zilani workers, tall, thin beings with translucent skin, were being honored for exceeding production quotas in the manufacturing sectors. As they stood on the stage accepting their awards, Captain Chen noticed something wrong. One of the Zilani was swaying slightly, and there were dark spots under his translucent skin that looked like bruises. Is he injured? She asked Vextari quietly. Worker fatigue. The Zilani pushed themselves to achieve excellence. Very dedication. Worker fatigue or overwork? Dr. Kim asked sharply, her medical training kicking in. There is no such thing as overwork in service to the Empire, came a new voice. They turned to see Imperial Inquisitor Maltheon, a tall being in black robes who had appeared behind them. Only degrees of dedication. Dr. Kim ignored the implied threat and stepped forward. That being needs medical attention. Those marks under his skin indicate internal bleeding. The worker's health is not your concern, Primitive. Actually, it is. Dr. Kim moved toward the stage. I'm a doctor. You are a guest who will observe proper protocols. Maltheon signaled to the guards. But Thompson was already moving. The big human stepped between Dr. Kim and the Imperial guards, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. The doctor said someone needs help. We help. You will stand down or face the consequences of defying Imperial authority. Thompson smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I'm from Earth. We have a long history of defying authority when it's doing stupid things. Want to see how that usually works out? The confrontation might have escalated, but it was interrupted by a commotion on the stage. The injured Zilani had collapsed. As he fell, other Zilani workers moved to help him, but Imperial supervisors pushed them back. The Imperial detention facility was designed to intimidate. The cells were small, dark, and surrounded by energy fields that hummed with barely contained power. The walls showed holographic displays of previous prisoners being broken by Imperial interrogation techniques. Captain Chen and her crew sat in their cells, waiting. They had been separated, but the detention center's designers hadn't counted on humans knowing Morse code. By tapping on the walls, they kept in contact and maintained morale. Everyone okay? Chen tapped out. Bored, came Thompson's response. Their security is terrible. I could be out in 10 minutes. Stay put for now, Chen replied. Let's see what they want to know. She didn't have to wait long. The cell door dissolved and Inquisitor Maltheon entered with 2 guards. He was carrying a device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a torture device. Captain Chen, he said formally, You and your crew have caused considerable disruption to Imperial order. Before we decide your fate, I require information about your species. Ask away, Chen replied, settling back on her cell's simple bench. Though I should warn you, humans aren't very interesting. Maltheon activated his device and pointed it at her. This instrument can detect lies. I will know if you attempt deception. Good, I hate repeating myself. First question, what great warrior caste produced fighters like your security chief Thompson? Chen laughed. Thompson? He sold insurance before he joined the Marines. Before that, he worked in his family's shoe store. The lie detector remained silent, but Maltheon frowned. Impossible. Only beings bred for combat could defeat trained Imperial guards so easily. Have you seen your guards fight? They spend more time polishing their armor than training. Thompson's good, but he's not special. Most humans could have done what he did. Most humans are warriors. Most humans stay in reasonable shape and know basic self-defense. It's practical when you live on a world with predators and sometimes hostile neighbors. Maltheon made notes on a tablet. What great empire trained you in the arts of leadership and command? Chen's laughter was louder this time. Great empire? Have you seen Earth's politics lately? We can barely agree on what day it is. I got my command training in the Solar Mining Guild, which is about as military as a grocery store. But you showed no fear when facing the Imperial fleet. You must come from a civilization that conquers star systems. We've got one star system, and we're still figuring out how to manage that. Most of our ships are mining vessels or research platforms. Our biggest warship is about the size of your shuttles. The interrogation continued for hours. Every answer Chen gave seemed to confuse Maltheon more. He had clearly expected to find a hidden empire of warrior philosophers who had trained these humans for some grand purpose. Instead, he found miners. Your engineer Rodriguez demonstrated advanced knowledge of Imperial technology, Maltheon tried. What great scientific academy produced such learning? Rodriguez learned engineering in community college and working on mining equipment. The reason he could improve your power systems is that your technology is 10,000 years old. It's like asking a modern mechanic to fix a steam engine. Our technology is perfect. It has maintained the empire for 10 millennia. Your technology is stagnant. You've stopped innovating, stopped improving, stopped thinking. That's not perfection, that's death. Maltheon's device started beeping frantically. Lies. The empire represents the highest achievement of galactic civilization. According to who, you? Chen leaned forward. Let me tell you about the highest achievement of galactic civilization, Inquisitor. It's not your empire. It's the Cretani who built self-thinking ships before you enslaved them. It's the Morvani who could probably solve equations with their minds if you hadn't forced them to do manual labor. It's the Zilani who you're working to death instead of learning from their insights. They are primitive beings who require guidance. They're more advanced than you are. You've taken the best minds in the galaxy and turned them into slaves because you're too insecure to admit they might have better ideas than your precious traditions. The lie detector stayed silent through Chen's entire speech. Maltheon stared at the device as if it had betrayed him. Impossible, he muttered. The Empire is the greatest civilization in galactic history. The Empire is a protection racket run by the galaxy's biggest cowards, Chen replied calmly. You're so afraid of change, so terrified that someone might have a better idea than you, that you've spent 10,000 years making sure nobody can innovate, create, or think for themselves. Maltheon activated his communications device. Bring in the other prisoners. All of them. Soon, Chen's entire crew was crowded into the interrogation chamber. Maltheon pointed his lie detector at each of them in turn. Dr. Kim, what medical academy trained you to diagnose Zilani physiology so quickly? I went to medical school on Earth and learned basic xenobiology from textbooks. The Zilani's condition was obvious because you were starving him to death. Rodriguez, what warrior engineer caste taught you to analyze Imperial technology? I'm a mining engineer. I fix machines for a living. Your power systems use the same basic principles as our mining equipment, just with fancier decorations and worse efficiency. Thompson, what military order taught you combat techniques? The United States Marine Corps. We're not an order, we're a job. Anyone can join if they meet the standards and want to serve their country. Each answer registered as completely truthful, and each one made Maltheon more agitated. You cannot all be ordinary. He finally exploded. You disrupted 10 millennia of Imperial order. You caused client species to question their place. You suggested that the Empire's methods were wrong. We ask questions, Chen said simply. That's what humans do. We see something that doesn't make sense, and we ask why. Questions lead to chaos. Questions lead to improvement. The Empire has gone 10,000 years without a single improvement because you've made questioning illegal. Dr. Kim spoke up. I've been thinking about your client species. Do you know what they all have in common? Malthion turned to her suspiciously. They all recognize imperial wisdom? They're all more advanced than the Empire. Every single species you've conquered was developing better technology, better social systems, better ways of living. You didn't conquer primitive worlds. You conquered your betters and then forced them to pretend you were superior. Lies. Truth, the lie detector confirmed helpfully. Rodriguez nodded. It makes sense. If you only conquered primitive species, they couldn't build the advanced ships and stations that keep your empire running. You need skilled slaves, so you find the most advanced civilizations and break them. But here's the thing about advanced civilizations, Thompson added. They don't stay broken forever. Sooner or later, they remember what they used to be. Malthion was looking increasingly desperate. The Empire has maintained order for 10,000 years. It cannot be wrong. 10,000 years of making the same mistakes, Chen observed. That's not success. That's stubborn refusal to learn. What would you have us do? Malthion demanded. Allow chaos? Permit every species to do whatever they wish? Let them fight wars and develop dangerous technologies? Chen stood up slowly. We would have you stop being cowards. Stop being so afraid of change that you'd rather rule over a stagnant empire than live in a growing galaxy. Stop being so insecure that you have to enslave anyone who might be smarter than you. And what happens when species fight each other? What happens when they develop weapons that could destroy worlds? The same thing that happens on Earth, Chen replied. They learn that cooperation works better than conquest. They discover that trade is more profitable than war. They figure out that diversity makes everyone stronger. Earth has no wars. Earth has lots of wars. We also have lots of peace. We have lots of cooperation and lots of competition. We have lots of success and lots of failure. What we don't have is one group deciding for everyone else how they have to live. Malthion sank into a chair, looking suddenly old. But without the Empire, there would be chaos. Without the Empire, there would be freedom, Dr. Kim said gently. And yes, freedom is messy. It's loud and chaotic, and sometimes people make mistakes. But it's also creative and innovative and alive. The Empire isn't alive, Rodriguez added. It's a machine that's been running the same program for 10,000 years. No growth, no change, no improvement. Just the same thing over and over until it breaks down. Thompson looked around the detention facility with its intimidating displays and energy barriers. And it is breaking down. We could see it the moment we arrived. Your guards can't fight. Your technology is obsolete. Your people are angry. The only thing holding it together is fear, and fear doesn't last forever. Malthion looked at his lie detector. Every word they had spoken registered as truth. If the Empire falls, he asked quietly, what replaces it? Captain Chen smiled. That's the beautiful part. Nobody decides what replaces it. The people who live in the galaxy get to figure that out for themselves. For the first time since they had been captured, Malthion's device detected a lie. Not from the humans, but from Malthion himself when he whispered, "That's impossible." Deep down, the Inquisitor was beginning to suspect it might not be. News traveled fast through Imperial Station magnificence, especially news that challenged 10,000 years of accepted truth. Within days of the humans' arrest, whispers spread through the client. Species quarters like wildfire. The humans said we could choose our own leaders. They said the Empire's technology is old and broken. They said asking questions isn't wrong. They said we're more advanced than our masters. In the Cretani engineering sections, workers who had been building the same ship designs for centuries started sketching modifications on scraps of metal. In the Morvani computational centers, beings who had been performing routine calculations began wondering what they could accomplish if allowed to think freely. In the Zilani manufacturing areas, workers removed their control collars and found that productivity actually increased when they weren't being tortured. Vextari watched the growing unrest with increasing panic. She had dedicated her life to Imperial service, truly believing in the system's perfection. Now 37 primitive humans had shaken that faith in less than a week. It's not possible, she told herself. reviewing the reports flooding her office. The Empire has brought peace to the galaxy. The humans must be mistaken. But the lie detector she had borrowed from Mal Theon remained stubbornly silent. Meanwhile, in the detention center, Captain Chen and her crew were receiving unexpected visitors. The energy barriers around their cells flickered and died as Cretani engineers applied their knowledge of Imperial technology to the problem of freeing their new friends. Captain Chen said the same small furry being Dr. Kim had spoken with earlier. I am Kravak of the Cretani. We have come to ask you something important. Ask away, Chen replied, stretching muscles that had grown stiff in the small cell. Is it really true that beings can choose their own governments? On Earth, yes. Most human governments are chosen by the people they govern. When leaders do bad jobs, we replace them. Kravak's 6 arms trembled with excitement. And you have no castes? Anyone can become a leader? Anyone can try. Whether they succeed depends on whether other people think they'll do a good job. A Morvani appeared beside Kravak, her crystalline head formations glowing with thought patterns. The mathematical possibilities are incredible, she said in a voice like singing crystals. If each being can contribute according to their abilities rather than their assigned caste, the potential for advancement increases exponentially. Thompson looked around at the growing crowd of aliens filling the corridor. How did you all get down here? This is supposed to be a high-security area. A tall Zilani smiled, his translucent skin showing healthy circulation for the first time since they had arrived. Turns out Imperial security assumes everyone will obey orders. When you stop obeying, their systems don't work very well. Dr. Kim was examining the Zilani with professional interest. You look much better. How do you feel? Free, the Zilani replied simply. For the first time in my life, I feel free. More beings appeared. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Species that had been carefully segregated by Imperial policy were working together, sharing knowledge that had been suppressed for millennia. This is fascinating, Rodriguez observed, watching a group of different species collaborating on what looked like a massive engineering project. What are you building? Communication system, Kravak explained proudly. Connecting all client species throughout the Empire. Sharing ideas, sharing hope, sharing truth. Captain Chen felt a familiar mix of pride and worry. That's wonderful, but you realize the Empire won't just let you walk away, right? They've got massive fleets, weapons, armies. About that, Thompson said, pointing down the corridor. Captain, you need to see this. They followed him to a viewing portal that showed the station's main docking bays. What Chen saw there made her whistle in amazement. Ships were arriving by the hundreds. Not Imperial vessels, but cobbled-together craft built by client species using hidden knowledge and suppressed innovations. They weren't pretty or standardized, but they moved with a grace and efficiency that put Imperial ships to shame. The Cretani built thinking ships in secret, Kravak explained. The Morvani developed instant communication networks. The Zilani created manufacturing systems that can build anything from raw materials. We've been preparing for this moment for centuries, we just never had the courage to act. And now you do. Now we know it's possible. You showed us that beings can choose their own fate. Before Chen could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows as automated voices announced, Imperial fleet approaching. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Through the viewing portal, they watched as the largest Imperial fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace. Thousands of golden warships in perfect formation, led by Admiral Zethkar's massive flagship. Well, Chen observed calmly, I guess they're tired of negotiating. The communication system that the client species had built crackled to life, carrying Admiral Zethkar's voice to every corner of the station. Rebel scum, you have 30 minutes to surrender and return to your proper stations. The humans will be executed as an example. Any species that continues this insurrection will be completely sterilized. The Empire's patience is at an end. Chen looked around at the thousands of beings who had filled the detention center. Many looked scared, but none looked ready to give up. 30 minutes, she said. Any ideas? What happened next was later called the Miracle of Magnificence Station. Though the participants always insisted it was just common sense applied to an obvious problem. The Cretani engineers had built the Imperial ships. They knew every weakness, every design flaw, every system that could be exploited. The Morvani computational specialists had calculated optimal strike patterns and defensive formations. The Zelani manufacturers had produced weapons and tools that the Empire didn't even know existed. But the real miracle was simpler than advanced technology or superior tactics. It was a question that the client species had never been allowed to ask. Why are we fighting for them instead of ourselves? 20 minutes before Admiral Zethkar's deadline, his communication officer brought him disturbing news. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from our own ships." "Excellent. The rebels are seeing reason." "No, sir. Our ships are requesting permission to surrender to the rebels." Admiral Zethkar stared at the communication officer as if he had spoken in an alien language. "That's impossible." "Sir, the crews are saying they don't want to fight their own families. Most of our personnel are client species conscripted into Imperial service. They're asking to join the rebellion." Through the bridge windows, Zethkar watched in horror as ship after ship in his mighty fleet turned their weapons away from the station and toward his flagship. "How can this be happening?" he whispered. His tactical officer, a Cretani who had served the Empire faithfully for 40 years, looked up from his instruments with tears in his 6 eyes. "Because you never gave us a reason to fight for you," the officer said quietly. "Only reasons to be afraid of you. And the humans taught us that fear doesn't have to be forever." The tactical officer pressed a single button, and the flagship's weapons powered down. Within the hour, the largest Imperial fleet in galactic history had become the largest Liberation fleet in galactic history. Admiral Zethkar found himself standing alone on his bridge, his crew having quietly walked away to join their families in freedom. The communication system crackled one more time, carrying Captain Chen's voice across the fleet. "Admiral, this is Captain Chen. We're preparing to head home to Earth now. Thanks for the escort, but I think these folks can handle things from here." "Wait," Zethkar called desperately. "You can't just leave. What about the Empire? What about order? What about me?" Chen's reply was gentle but firm. "Admiral, that's not our problem anymore. It's yours. You can figure out how to be part of the new galaxy, or you can keep trying to control the old one. But the choice is yours to make. But what if we fail? What if chaos returns? What if species fight each other again? Then you'll deal with it the same way everyone else does," Chen replied. "Together as equals, making it up as you go along." The last transmission from the Persistence came as the human ship disappeared into the same wormhole that had brought them to this corner of the galaxy. "Oh, and Admiral, you might want to do something about that dark matter buildup in Sector 7. Dr. Kim's calculations show it'll go supernova in about 50 years if nobody maintains the stabilizers. The maintenance protocols are in the Cretani engineering databases. Under the files marked things the Empire never let us fix." 6 months later, the former Admiral Zethkar stood in a simple office on what used to be Imperial Station magnificence. He wore plain clothes instead of elaborate robes, and his title was now Elected Representative of the Zethkaran People, rather than Admiral of the Imperial Fleet. Across from him sat Krevak of the Cretani, who had been elected as the first president of the Galactic Federation. The small engineer was reviewing reports from across the former empire. "The latest statistics," Krevak said cheerfully. "Productivity is up 300% across all sectors. Technological advancement has increased by 200%. Cultural exchange programs are being established between species that hadn't spoken to each other in millennia. And most importantly, the number of beings living in fear has dropped to essentially 0. Zethkar shook his head in wonder. "How is that possible? We were told that only Imperial control could prevent chaos." "Turns out," Krevak replied, "when you let people solve their own problems, they get pretty good at it." "And the humans? Have they returned?" "No. They sent a message saying they're busy mining asteroids and dealing with some political crisis about space traffic regulations. Apparently freedom really is messy." Zethkar looked out the window at the bustling activity around the station. Ships from a dozen species worked together on construction projects. Children from different worlds played games that mixed their various cultures. Researchers shared discoveries without worrying about whether innovation was permitted. It was chaotic. It was noisy. It was completely uncontrolled. It was beautiful. "Do you think they knew?" he asked quietly. "When they arrived, do you think the humans knew what would happen?" Krevak considered the question seriously. "I think they knew something would happen. Humans seem to have a talent for asking the right questions at the right time." "What was the right question? Why do we do things this way?" Kravuk smiled with all 6 arms. Such a simple question. Such a dangerous question. Such a necessary question. Outside the window, the galaxy continued its messy, chaotic, wonderful process of figuring out what came next. And in a small mining ship somewhere near Earth, Captain Sarah Chen was filing a report with the Solar Mining Guild that simply read, "Mission completed. Found no suitable asteroids for mining. Did accidentally overthrow a galactic empire, but no damage to company equipment." She never mentioned that the hardest part of the entire adventure had been keeping a straight face when people called them heroes. They were just humans, after all. Asking questions was what they did.